3 world wars were planned to establish the New World Order. How 3 world wars were planned to help establish the New World Order. Introduction. Many have heard about the satanic New World Order which is being established, with the help of the United Nations and godless government leaders. The establishment of this New World Order or Novus Ordo Secularum is proceeding with great success, at least in part because church leaders have failed to speak out against it, or to vigorously oppose it. Very few outsiders know about the intimate plans of the architects of the New World Order. One such architect was Albert Pike, who in the 19th century, established a framework for bringing about the One World Order. Based on a vision revealed to him by the devil, Albert Pike wrote out a blueprint of events that would play themselves out in the 20th century, with even more of these events yet to come. Who was Albert Pike? Pike was born on December 29, 1809, in Boston, went to Harvard, then later served as a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. After the Civil War, Pike was found guilty of treason and jailed, only to be pardoned by fellow Freemason President Andrew Johnson on April 22, 1866, who met with him the next day at the White House. On June 20, 1867, Scottish Rite officials conferred upon Johnson the 4th-32nd degrees, and he later went to Boston to dedicate a Masonic temple. The only monument to a Confederate general in Washington, D.C. was erected in Pike's honor, and it can be found between the Department of Labor building and the Municipal building, between 3rd and 4th Streets, on D Street, NW. Pike was a genius, able to read and write in 16 different languages. A 33rd degree Mason, he was one of the founding fathers, and head of the ancient accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, being the Grand Commander of North American Freemasonry from 1859 to 1891. In 1869, he was a top leader in the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. In 1871, he wrote the 861-page Masonic handbook known as The Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Rite of Freemasonry. Pike was said to be a Satanist, who indulged in the occult, and he apparently possessed a bracelet which he used to summon Lucifer, with whom he had constant communication. He was the Grand Master of a Luciferian group known as the Order of the Palladium or Sovereign Council of Wisdom, which had been founded in Paris in 1737. Palladism had been brought to Greece from Egypt by Pythagoras in the 5th century, and it was this cult of Satan that was introduced to the inner circle of the Masonic lodges. It was aligned with the Palladium of the Templars. In 1801, Isaac Long, a Jew, brought a statue of Baphomet Satan to Charleston, South Carolina, where he helped to establish the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. Long apparently chose Charleston because it was geographically located on the 33rd parallel of latitude, and this council is considered to be the Mother Supreme Council of all Masonic lodges of the world. Pike was Long's successor, and he changed the name of the order to the new and reformed Palladian Rite or Reformed Palladium. The order contained 2 degrees, 1, Adelph or brother, and 2, companion of Ulysses or companion of Penelope. Pike's right-hand man was Phileas Walder, from Switzerland, who was a former Lutheran minister, a Masonic leader, occultist, and spiritualist. Pike also worked closely with Giuseppe Mazzini of Italy 1805 to 1872, who was a 33rd degree Mason, who became head of the Illuminati in 1834, and who founded the Mafia in 1860. Together with Mazzini, Lord Henry Palmerston of England 1784 to 1865, 33rd degree Mason, and Otto von Bismarck from Germany 1815 to 1898, 33rd degree Mason, Albert Pike intended to use the Palladian Rite to create a satanic umbrella group that would tie all Masonic groups together. Because of Mazzini's revolutionary activities in Europe, the Illuminati had to go underground. In addition to the Supreme Council in Charleston, South Carolina, Pike established Supreme Councils in Rome, Italy led by Mazzini, London, England led by Palmerston, and Berlin, Germany led by Bismarck. He set up 23 subordinate councils in strategic places throughout the world, including 5 Grand Central Directories in Washington, D.C. North America, Montevideo South America, Naples Europe, Calcutta Asia, and Mauritius Africa, which were used to gather information. All of these branches have been the secret headquarters for the Illuminati's activities ever since. After Mazzini's death on March 11, 1872, Pike appointed Adriano Lemmi (1822–1896), 33rd-degree Mason, a banker from Florence, Italy, to run their subversive activities in Europe. Lemmi was a supporter of patriot and revolutionary Giuseppe Garibaldi, and may have been active in the Luciferian Society founded by Pike. Morals and Dogma. One of the major sourcebooks of Masonic doctrine is Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Masonry, written in 1871 by Albert Pike, and is considered to be the Mason's guide for daily living. In it, Masonry is a search after light. In Morals and Dogma, Pike wrote, "Every Masonic lodge is a temple of religion, and its teachings are instruction in religion. Masonry, like all religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages, or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead, to conceal the truth, which it calls light, from them, and to draw them away from it. The truth must be kept secret, and the masses need a teaching proportioned to their imperfect reason. Every man's conception of God must be proportioned to his mental cultivation, and intellectual powers, and moral excellence. God is, as man conceives him, the reflected image of man himself." The next statement reduces the Masonic philosophy to a single premise. Pike writes, "The true name of Satan, the Kabbalists say, is that of Yahweh reversed. For Satan is not a black god. Lucifer, the light-bearer. Strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light? Doubt it not." Albert Pike explained in Morals and Dogma how the true nature of Freemasonry is kept a secret from Masons of lower degrees. The blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. Their true explication is reserved for the adepts, the princes of Masonry. It is well enough for the mass of those called Masons, to imagine that all is contained in the blue degrees. And whoso attempts to undeceive them will labor in vain. One World Order. In 1859, Albert Pike, who was fascinated with the idea of a one-world government, was chosen to coordinate Illuminati activities in the United States. He said they needed to create a political party that would keep the world fighting, until they could bring peace. Pike said it would be done with tongue and pen, with all our open and secret influences, with a purse, and if need be, with a sword. In a letter dated January 22, 1870, Mazzini wrote to Pike, alluding to Pike's new and reformed Palladian rite, "We must allow all of the federations to continue just as they are, with their systems, their central authorities and diverse modes of correspondence between high grades of the same rite, organized as they are at present, but we must create a super-rite, which will remain unknown, to which we will call those Masons of high degree whom we shall select. With regard to our brothers in Masonry, these men must be pledged to the strictest secrecy. Through this supreme rite, we will govern all Freemasonry, which will become the one international center, the more powerful because its direction will be unknown." 3 world wars. As do most occultists, Albert Pike had a spirit guide, who dispensed divine wisdom and enlightened him regarding how to achieve the New World Order. A spirit guide is a being who meets someone who has given themselves over to the practice of the occult. However, people who are practitioners of the New Age religion do not view this as a bad thing. In fact, they would strongly argue that they are filled with happiness and joy by interacting with their spirit guides, not realizing that they have been temporarily deceived by Satan, who, along with his demons, can appear as an angel of light in order to deceive, and no marvel. For Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. 2 Corinthians 11:14-15. One message that Albert Pike received from a spirit guide, and which in reality we know to be a demonic vision, he described in a letter that he wrote to Mazzini, dated August 15, 1871. This letter graphically outlined plans for 3 world wars that were seen as necessary to bring about the one world order, and we can marvel at how accurately it has predicted events that have already taken place. This is not because the devil has powers of prophecy, but because his agents have undertaken to manipulate political events to closely follow his designs. For a short time, this letter was on display in the British Museum Library in London, and it was copied by William Guy Carr, former intelligence officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the Tsars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agent or agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. Students of history will recognize that the political alliances of England on one side and Germany on the other, forged between 1871 and 1898 by Otto von Bismarck, co-conspirator of Albert Pike, were instrumental in bringing about the First World War in 1917, at Fatima. Before the end of this First World War and before the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, the Blessed Virgin Mary predicted the rise of Russia as a major power that would be used as a scourge by God to punish an apostate world. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. In 1917, at Fatima, the Blessed Virgin Mary predicted the end of the First World War, and the coming of the Second. After the Second World War, communism was made strong enough to begin taking over weaker governments. In 1945, at the Potsdam Conference between Truman, Churchill, and Stalin, a large portion of Europe was simply handed over to Russia, and on the other side of the world, the aftermath of the war with Japan helped to sweep the tide of communism into China. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agenda of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, world events in the Middle East show a growing unrest and instability between Jews and Arabs. This is completely in line with the call for a Third World War to be fought between the two, and their allies on both sides. This Third World War is still to come, and recent events show us that it is not far off. The real force behind Freemasonry: on July 14, 1889, 2 years before his death, Pike issued the following statement to the 24 Supreme Masonic Councils of the world who were meeting in Paris: "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God one adores without superstition. To you, Sovereign Grand Inspectors General 33rd degree Masons, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God or Adonai, the Hebrew word for Lord which refers to Yahweh, the God of Israel, whose name they avoided using, whose deeds prove his cruelty, perfidy, and hatred of man, barbarism and repulsion for science, would Adonai and his priests calumniate him? Yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately Adonai is also God. For the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black, for the Absolute can only exist as two gods, darkness being necessary to light to serve as its foil, as the pedestal is necessary to the statue, and the brake to the locomotive. Thus, the doctrine of Satanism is a heresy. And the true and pure philosophic religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. Only I can help you. The Blessed Virgin May, in her appearances at Fatima in 1917, predicted the rise of Russia, and with it communism, as a scourge of God's punishment on the world. But she also gave the world a ray of hope, asking for penance, prayer, and the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. She stressed that the troubles that would befall the human race would be so severe, that no human solution would be possible. As she said, only I can help you. We can do our part by wearing the brown scapular, praying the rosary every day both for our own intentions, and that the Pope will finally consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in union with the bishops of the world, just as Our Lady of Fatima requested. When this consecration is finally done, Our Lady promised us that there would be peace. We know that this consecration has not been done because we can see that world events are now being manipulated in preparation for the Third World War, as outlined in the satanic plans of Albert Pike, as a necessary step to establish the New World Order. The end. Thank you for listening.